Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. This episode of Slam the Gavel is sponsored by CPS Protect Consulting Services. A child protective services case is one of the most frightening experiences for any parent. Don't face it alone. Face it with confidence with Urgent Assist by CPS Protect. You can have access to former CPS investigators to make sure you preserve your rights and protect your family. If you're facing CPS involvement and aren't sure where to turn, their child welfare consultants can help you. Visit cpsprotect.com/subscribe and enter the coupon code Slam the Gavel for 60% off your first year of Urgent Assist. And this is available in all 50 states. I have another announcement. Bradley's mother, Narcus Golan, passed away in the fall of 2022. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to the Italian social services. If he is ruled to go back, he will then face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system, where he can't speak or understand the language. He will then be taken away from the only family he has ever known, and we have Judge Ann Donnelly to thank for that. So please call Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390 to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. That's Governor Hochul, 518-474-8390, hashtag keep Bradley safe. Last announcement, go to the site, pleasedoyourjob.com. We need 2,500 more signatures to get a case reopened. So that's pleasedoyourjob.com. I've got a brand new guest on. I'm happy to have Dawn Wolfson on. She was already a follower of the work being done by the Innocence Project when her family was hit by a false accusation exactly 4 years ago. A family member who was about to start his super senior year of high school, he was a special education student. He met a girl through a mutual friend. They had relations at a sleepover, and for reasons they may never know, she suddenly accused him of rape. From the start, he did everything wrong. He tried to contact her online to find out what was going on, apologized on a pretext call, and didn't tell his family until after he was questioned at school by law enforcement. This was the beginning of an eye-opening 2.5-year journey through the legal system. They were lucky. They had retirement savings and found a great lawyer who also knew a very motivated investigator. He tracked down enough witnesses to create doubt on the accuser's story, and the DA dropped the charges. So I welcome you, Dawn Wolfson. I'm very pleased to have you on. And how are you? And where are you at now with this?
I'm good. It's great to be here. And where am I at now with this? Well, figuring out where I want to go and what I can do to, help make things better for people in similar situations. We have a pretty good scenario here. We have somebody who didn't have to go through a trial, didn't get incarcerated. He does still have an arrest on his record. And if the law hadn't recently changed, there would be no way to get that arrest off ever. So, I'm pleased to see that the state of California has changed the law and it will eventually get sealed. But, there are so many people out there who their loved ones are in jail, their loved ones have committed suicide. One of the groups I'm involved with around decriminalizing developmental disabilities, a young man just got convicted of rape who was literally not physically capable of the act, and yet the court didn't listen to any of the evidence. So really, our family was really lucky, but it could have gone so much worse. We had a prosecutor who was convinced that he had a slam dunk case. He wasn't a very ethical man. He had a Brady violation up where he had come from. And he was convinced that, based on what this girl and her friends who had lied for her
Mhm.
had said, that he had a conviction in the bag. And then COVID hit and it delayed the case. The investigator, who has a grandson with autism and was very motivated to
Mhm.
find these people, actually tracked down witnesses who were able to shed, some major doubt on this girl's case. But it took 2 years to track these people down. I mean, it's like they were drug dealers or something, because they were constantly changing jobs and burner phones. And
Mhm.
but we did finally get statements from all but one of the witnesses. And then this district attorney left, and thank goodness, because I actually saw him in court stand up and act like he didn't know that the young man had autism right in front of the judge. And uh so he went back to the other county to be the DA there, and God help him, but we got a district attorney who was ethical.
Mhm.
And the family's attorney got this district attorney to reopen the case, and her investigator tracked down that last witness, and she straight up told them on a recording that she had lied for this girl who had made the accusation, or they couldn't be friends anymore. And so she finally owned up to it. And
Oh,
it took like literally another 6 months, and I can't even tell you how many court dates, but the district attorney's office finally dropped the charges. It was an awful 2.5 years, really bad, scary. His mom had to see him arrested in front of her, and
um,
he got bullied at school and lost a job, and it was just not fun.
and what happens to these people that make these false accusations? Is
Well,
there
that's the
rep
infuriating thing.
mm,
Absolutely no consequences. The district attorney isn't going to go after any of them for perjury or filing a false police report or malicious prosecution or anything. They just go on with their lives like nothing ever happened. And meanwhile, this kid has learned not to trust people, and his
mm.
mom is out like $40,000, and it was just terrible.
I can't imagine the post-traumatic stress this young man must have.
Yeah, and he didn't want to be identified, so just wants to go on with his life. And he is living a pretty good life now. He's got a good friend that he hangs out with, and he's got a job, and kind of started dating again, although so far, that hasn't worked out real well for him. But he's moving forward thanks to the family support. But you think of the people that either the family didn't have money, the family didn't support them, the person just got into a depression and either got into drugs or something. There's so much of that out there, and the system just doesn't care. It seems to be all about just winning and, getting somebody, and I don't know, like points on a chalkboard or something.
But that's very tragic that there is no consequences, and people that should do their job should be doing their job.
Yeah, and right up front, the attorney told the family, even if the girl had admitted she had lied, which she never did, nobody's going to go after her. And it has to do with the whole fear that real victims won't come forward. Well, of course, my family member is a real victim,
Uh-huh.
and the person who victimized him has had no consequences. So I'm involved in a bunch of groups that are trying to make a difference, and I'm sort of trying to figure out where to fit in. There are some things I could pursue, like the school districts, for example. They basically let the sheriff come in and question a special education student, a kid with a degree with a diagnosis of autism. They let the sheriff come in, no adult sitting there, no adult explaining to him what his rights are, and just let them in with no oversight. And I kind of feel like, at a minimum, they should have had an adult there, and they should have had an adult talk to him first, but they just kind of let him loose. And I can't say that the sheriff did anything particularly unethical. I've looked at the transcript, and they seem to have followed the law, but still, you're talking about a vulnerable kid who really has no clue what's going on, and believes that because I'm innocent, nothing's going to happen. And of course it did.
Mhm. Oh, that's a heartbreaking part for everybody when you know you're innocent and you think everyone else is going to believe you're innocent too. And
Right.
it like
Right.
you
Yeah.
said, it's an eye opener.
Yeah. And we were coming back from the first appointment with the attorney, because I went with him and his parents, and we were driving home, and this attorney, he gives you the whole worst case scenario. He doesn't lead you on that it's all going to be sunshine and roses. And on the way driving home, the young man said, "My God, I might not ever marry or have children. I might be in jail for my 20s and my 30s." And I think that's the first time, the realization hit. It's really frightening.
And just based on pettiness and cattiness that these 2 friends helped her out.
Yeah, and one of them turned around pretty quickly afterwards and admitted the truth. The other one wouldn't return calls and kind of ran and hid. And then the third witness, who was really helpful, had absolutely refused to talk to the sheriff, didn't like law enforcement. We got a good statement once we tracked him down, but it was a year to track him down. And then there was literally going to be a trial. This district attorney was so convinced he had a slam dunk case that he never even so much as offered a deal, nothing. Jury selection was literally happening, and two people walked into the courtroom and wrote on their jury questionnaire, "I'm sorry I can't serve because I think I've been exposed to COVID." And you think
Uh-huh.
how dumb that is, because they could have just called and, gotten excused. But on the other hand, thank God that they did, because it gave us the time, because they shut the trial down at that point.
Mm.
Because the entire jury pool could have been exposed. So
Oh.
it gave us the time to track these people down, and the investigator actually got statements. So COVID actually saved um saved the case. Who knows what a jury would have done with what the investigator had at that point in
Mhm.
time. um and then, the change in district attorney 6 months later, and after that it was, it's incredible how slow things are. I mean, 3 hours in the courtroom just to say, next, we're going to set another date. over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And it's like, why do we have to show up for this stuff? Couldn't you just email a date or something?
Right,
It's so inefficient. It's wasteful.
and that's a waste of taxpayer dollars.
It is. It's just, it's really dumb.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's actually one thing that they could probably do a whole lot better. In fact, I read that there were some courts that actually were trying out, like, not making the defendant show up for a date setting date or
Mhm.
whatever. So little things that could be improved. But after it was all over, um, I had this whole list of things that I was thinking of doing. And I got in this conversation with a local person that I'd been working on, like a completely unrelated
Mm.
political thing. There was kind of a local veterans issue that we were sort of collaborating on, and we just got to talking. And I don't even know why I did it, but I told him this story. And turns out he was essentially, well, he was part of the National Coalition for Men, and they fight against gender bias and things like that, but also false accusations against men, rape, domestic violence, so on. Turns out he had quite a lot of expertise on the subject, and he had looked at a lot of the statistics and well, considered himself an expert, let's just say, and offered to write a letter for the young man um, to help him get a job, basically. Called and spoke to the attorney and got the whole story, wrote him a couple of letters so that, if he ever goes for a job and this arrest shows up on a background report check, because that's still a concern, is if he decides to change jobs, is he going to not get it because this arrest is going to show up. So he wrote a letter saying that this person is very, very likely innocent, that there are eyewitnesses, that there are witnesses who admit that they lied. It sounds like a false accusation. Um, and we got to be good friends, and for a while there we were dating.
Mhm.
Turns out that the gentleman had a very abusive relationship in his past and a false accusation. And we were probably together about 3 months, not quite 3 months, and he started having nightmares.
Mm.
Um, one of his ex-wives had treated him really badly. I mean, cheated on him, thrown it in his face, treated him like an idiot. And this is a very smart man, just very, very abusive. And then when they broke up, made this false accusation of domestic violence, which the court upheld, even though there wasn't any domestic violence. Lost his career in law enforcement and so on. And it ended up, he just ended up deciding he just couldn't be in a relationship. As soon as he started getting close to somebody, he started having these feelings like, oh my God, it's happening again, and nightmares and anxiety. And told me afterwards he felt like he had been so scarred that he just couldn't do love again. That just stuck with me. So, downstream effects of false accusations. I mean, you think, oh, this person was exonerated or acquitted or whatever, and they just go on with their lives. And no, there's trauma.
Mhm. Oh, that's very true. Well, I too had a false accusation of emotional child abuse, but this follows you everywhere, even though I was exonerated twice from back-to-back accusations. It's amazing how people can just call in an accusation and waste taxpayers' dollars, cause someone to lose their career, and there's no repercussions.
Yeah,
And
and in fact, the court system in California, I've seen videos, they will grant a domestic violence restraining order just on a person's word, because if they don't, the appellate court is going to overturn them anyway. So it doesn't even matter if there was any domestic violence, if the woman says there was legally, and then, it makes it harder to see your kids and all this stuff, and you're sitting there falsely accused of something you didn't do, and
so then anyone can grant a restraining order based on somebody's word because they know the appeals court will just automatically turn it over?
I don't know, necessarily the women who make the accusations know this, but the judges know it. The judges know, because I actually saw these two training judges in a video talking about it, and they literally stated, you might as well grant it, because as soon as it goes to appeal, they're going to overturn you. So they actually train other judges to just do it. And it could be just on something mean that somebody said, and there never was any kind of violence whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
In this person's case, I guess he had sent a mean email, because she was cheating on him, and he I guess threatened to post something in Craigslist saying she was looking for men or something, and apologized about it later, but the judge didn't really care. It's like, well, you threatened her, so she has a credible fear, restraining order granted. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's scary out there.
Yeah, one of the family's fears was that the district attorney would come back with some kind of a deal. And the person would end up on the registry when he didn't do anything wrong, with a conviction and so on, and then possibly probation. His life isn't his own, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe even having to pay for the privilege, because a lot of the court systems actually make you pay for things like, oh, I don't know, anger management, and the addiction training, even if you didn't have even if you had never done drugs or anything, and then you have to pay for it, and if you don't do it on time, you're back in court, and it's just this big snowball that you get sucked into, and some people seem to never get out of it. It's awful.
I think that's really important what you said. They get sucked into it, whether you like it or not. Everyone, even I've talked to mothers and fathers, if there's a false allegation or whatever, they're taking their kids, they all have to do anger management. And this is just out of control.
You've got this entire, the entire government, so this great big mountain of a system against maybe one little person and their attorney. And if they aren't so fortunate as to have retirement savings or whatever, then they probably have a public defender. The public defender's overworked. They don't have time to really look at the case. They're pushing them to take a deal. It's the best thing you can get, and so forth and so on. And they're sucked into the system. It's expensive, and it's scary, and some people never get out of it. It's awful.
Mhm. Yeah, because, I've told my kids, "Never take a plea deal. Never. Make it go to trial."
Yeah. So there was this well, a couple of the groups I'm involved in, because I am a member of NCFM, but I also got involved in these two other groups. One of them was decriminalizing developmental disabilities, and they advocate for people with various autism and Down syndrome and et cetera, who get sucked into the system,
Mhm.
maybe because they've, I don't know, done something inappropriate that they didn't know was, and next thing you know, they're in prison, they're not getting their meds and so on, and so they're, trying to raise awareness around that and improve the system for people like that. The other group is new. It's called Advocates for the Falsely Accused. And it started sort of as part of NCFM, their women's group, and sort of broke off. And we're just starting. We're trying to maybe get a support group together, get online resources. We were at an event in Chicago that had some really great speakers. September 8th for International False Accusations Day. Had some great speakers. There's one guy who just sticks out in my mind, who was falsely convicted of murder on the statement of a 12-year-old eyewitness who, I guess, pulled him out of a lineup or something. And he was in prison about, I think he said 28 years for a murder he didn't commit. And meanwhile, his family was trying to get an appeal through the system. And it took them a lot of years, but they actually tracked this 12-year-old witness down. And I was going to say the young man, but I guess by then he was probably like 40,
Mm.
said, "I'm so glad you found me. I've been wanting to speak up for years. The detective who worked the case told me to say that. I never saw you."
Mm.
Well, so the district attorney goes back to this person in prison and tries to talk him into taking a plea. If you'll just admit to, I don't remember what the charge was, we will let you go home this week. And the guy's like, "I didn't do it. I'm not going to admit to it." So they eventually, and I don't remember how much longer it took, it was maybe another year or two, but they finally got that evidence looked into and got the charge overturned. So here's this man, almost 30 years of his life. And he had been doing good before that. He'd been working a youth community center and basically keeping kids off the street. And this detective just decided, well, we need we need to convict somebody. Let's just pick on him. I don't know how someone can, in any kind of a clear conscience, do that.
Mm.
But now he helps people who are in prison, and whether they're innocent or guilty, he helps people get their lives back together when they get out. So, but that's just one example of, a case in our system where they just threw somebody away and tossed the key, and and then they tried to get him to take a plea deal. It's just so outrageous.
And he lost, like, the best years of his life in there,
Right.
and no one cares. No one cares.
Yeah. Yeah. You see, the news, and so and so was arrested for this, and the social media frenzy, lock him up, throw away the key, and all this stuff. And it's like, well, couldn't we wait until we see what the evidence is?
Right.
One of the speakers in the group, he was the mayor of a small town outside of Houston, and there was a false accusation. And there was a media frenzy like nothing you ever saw because he was an elected official. He gets acquitted, and the media wasn't out there, oh my God, we were wrong, this poor man, what have we done to his life? There was maybe a little one-line blurb at the bottom of last year's article or something saying he was acquitted.
And that was it.
Pretty much.
Mhm.
So, one of the things the group wants to try and work on is some way to help people at least somewhat get their reputations back. You know, require the media to print retractions or something. Discourage them from, I don't know, posting mugshots. I guess a lot of them are not doing that now, which is a good start.
Mhm.
Um, but they kind of, as soon as there's an accusation, they run with it, and
Yeah, it's
it's
like
really hurtful.
yeah, people are small-minded. They won't say, "Well, let's just wait and see." I remember way back when I was probably maybe 21, 22, and it was on the news that a teacher at school was accused of inappropriately touching this girl, or 2 of them. And they showed him coming down the courthouse hallway, and my mother was standing behind me saying, "Yep, where there's smoke, there's fire. He did it." And I had this feeling, I knew he didn't do it. I told her, I said, "No, I know he didn't do it." "Oh, yes, he did." Well, as it turned out, as months progressed, he spent all his retirement, pension, whatever, and the girls admitted that they were ticked off that he gave them a D in their math,
Oh, wow.
grade, and
Wow.
but well, nothing was ever done with these people for lying.
Yeah, there's just like no consequences. There's an activist friend of mine who was a special education teacher, and he had a young man who was, I believe, severely autistic, and it was literally in his IEP that it was okay to hug him and give him a kiss on the cheek because it calmed him down and it got him to focus. This was with his parents' permission, signed and everything. And somehow it turned into a witch hunt, and he was accused of sexually abusing minors. And you can still find the accusations in the paper and everything. He was reinstated as a teacher. The charges were just completely false. But to this day, when he gets involved in local political events, the other side will start calling him a child molester and stuff. And he's the nicest, sweetest man you ever met.
Yeah, I I'm at a loss for words because I'm just so disappointed in humanity with every story that I hear.
Yeah. I
Through
remember, Me Too, and
Mhm.
I'm somewhat liberal and I somewhat consider myself a feminist. And but when that came out, I went, well, wait a minute. You can't just take somebody's word for it. And I do a lot of political reading. And it's like everything from Breitbart over here to the World Socialist website over there. Or maybe I've got the hands reversed, but um, funny thing about it is that the socialists and the really ultra conservatives both agreed you can't just take a person's word. People lie.
Mhm.
I was talking to a friend about this, and she straight up said, "Yeah, there are as many crappy women out there as there are crappy men. Wait for the evidence."
Mhm. Oh, I know, it's I agree with you. I was raised not to to lie. And I guess, I don't know, maybe some of these people were never taught the 10 commandments or any basic religious training. I don't know how some people were raised, but I was raised not to lie about anything because you go to hell. Okay. And then I heard this on my other podcast that someone had suggested that why isn't there a registry for false accusers?
That's funny you should mention that because that's one of the things we're talking about. The thing is, and I was searching through the NCFM site, and I believe they did at one time have something like that, and it got taken down. So if we do something like that, we're probably going to have to make it private, or we're likely to get sued. But it's something we're considering. Um, and you're so vulnerable to getting sued. The president of the AFA organization, for example, her son is in jail for what was almost certainly a false accusation of rape, and she can give you all the reasons why it probably was. Well, of course, she will say it definitely was, and I'm just sort of hedging because I haven't seen the evidence. But I believe he was almost certainly falsely accused. The young woman who falsely accused him has done other things. And she believes the false accusation came because somebody walked in on them and she had fear that she might lose custody of her child. Um, and so my friend was trying to gather evidence for her son's appeal. And she got taken to court for stalking. She was talking to witnesses, she was trying to get evidence to help the attorney to overturn her son's conviction. She got convicted of stalking. She actually lost the case, and for 2 years she couldn't talk about it. She did finally get it overturned on appeal, and so now she's out there telling the story, telling the girl's name, everything, trying to get her son at his conviction overturned, because he's doing 7 years for something we believe he did not do. And so why people lie, I mean, in the case of the girl who accused my family member, I can only guess, but there have been studies done where people have been asked, people who've actually admitted that they made a false accusation, and it's anything from to calm my parents down, I didn't want my parents to know I was doing this, to revenge, either the person broke up with you, they made you angry for some reason, or something like this, where she might have gotten in trouble with her son's father if it had come out. And it's just lots of different reasons, but it mostly seems to be either covering something up or revenge.
Mhm.
And but just there's way too much of it out there. I don't know, the person who did that study seems to think that false accusations of rape could be as high as 40%. I don't know if it's really that high, but the 2% that some people throw out there is way the heck too low. I've heard too many stories.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, I have too. Yeah, it's the most scariest thing because people don't believe it until it happens to them.
Yeah. And people, as soon as it's sexual abuse, and especially if a child's involved, people just jump all over it, burn them, hang them.
Right. It's just very, I mean, I guess I'm a fair person. I want to see all the evidence first before I make a decision. I wish other people would think like this, but they don't. I don't know if it's that cancel culture mentality.
I don't know. It's, I guess it's very human, but getting people to not be emotional about stuff and just be rational is that's very difficult right there,
Mhm. Yeah.
especially when children are involved, I guess.
Mhm. Well, that's very true. It's just lying is just something that it's just people have got to stop doing. Just tell the truth.
Yeah, and law enforcement has got to be more careful, and they've got to go stop going into it with the attitude that we've got to get somebody. They've got to look at it as the accuser could be the bad guy, not maybe treat them like they're the bad guy, but they've got to go in with a healthy dose of skepticism and do a good investigation.
But it seems like once something gets out, they're presumed guilty until proven innocent. And it
Yeah,
just I don't know when all that changed because it's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but now it's the other way around, you know.
it's supposed to be, but um one of the family members made the comment that trying to think of the exact word, that the accuser's word has more rights than the accused's, and it shouldn't be that way. Not unless there is absolutely evidence to support it.
Mhm.
But district attorneys, they get pressured to get convictions. In most states, they're elected. Ours was, and they don't push convictions. They get accused of being soft on crime. They get voted out. So, being elected maybe isn't a good thing. Same with judges. I mean, because people look at their record, and if they dismiss too many cases, theoretically they could get voted out too.
Mhm.
It's kind of almost incestuous.
Yes.
The judge in our family member's case is married to a sheriff, and I sat in a lot of the court hearings with the family when they would let me in because COVID.
Mhm.
um, and this judge, when the prosecutor who was convinced that he had a slam dunk case was there, this judge was absolutely hardline, wouldn't concede anything, you know, ruled against the defense attorney almost every single motion he made. And then a year later, when the new district attorney was in, and suddenly it wasn't such a slam dunk case, she had an entirely different attitude. I mean, I don't know if she won the lottery or if it was really the relationship with the district attorney, but it was like it was a different judge.
Mm. It's almost like a split personality.
Yeah, or just, I don't know if the district attorney talks to the judge beforehand or what the deal is, but she was like the tough judge from hell with the first district attorney, and a little bit more like a human being with the second one. So I don't know.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. I'm glad things worked out, but still, this fellow has an arrest record that he has to deal with.
Yeah. And after the charges were dropped, we all had a conversation with the defense attorney about what we could do to get the arrest sealed. And he basically said, the district attorney dropped charges without prejudice, this arrest will be there forever. And, unless this girl comes back and says, yes, I lied, this arrest will be there forever. Last year, they did change the law, and the law basically allows arrest records to be sealed once you have passed the statute of limitations. So, in like 6 years, the arrest could be sealed. But in the meantime, we have a young man in his 20s who has an arrest that's sitting out there that nobody can do anything about.
So,
And as far as going after this girl, because the parents thought, well, we could sue this girl. We're out $40,000.
yeah.
Nobody's going to take the case. Couldn't find an attorney that would take the case, and it would probably cost more money than it was worth anyway. They had thought perhaps if we could find an attorney, we could at least depose the girl, and maybe a good attorney could get her to admit she had lied, take it back to the district attorney, drop the charges with prejudice, and then you could get the arrest sealed. Couldn't find an attorney who would even take the case.
Well, I mean, that sounds easy, just to depose someone, and you're not running into a courtroom like.
Yeah, but nobody seems to take defamation cases. I don't know how many firms they ended up contacting, but every single one told them, no, we can't help you.
So, California passed this, what was it, last year, that the arrest records will be sealed once the statutes of limitations have passed, which is what, 6 years?
I believe it was 6 years, yeah. And it's not in force yet. I think that the various jurisdictions are figuring out how they are going to actually administer it, but it's supposed to be automatic. So the good thing is nobody has to go and apply or whatever. It will automatically be done. I'm still a little unclear about whether or not it applies to things like rape, murder, so forth and so on, but it's at least hopeful. It's gone from this will never go away to there's a good chance that it probably eventually will.
Wow. But 6 years is like a long, long time, when
It
usually
is.
statutes of limitations are like, "Oh, it's 2 years, you can't do anything now," if you wanna
Right.
sue for defamation or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and the clock is ticking on the possibility of a defamation suit. I think it's 2 years from when the charges were dropped, and that gives them about 6 more months. But, I do see positive little changes in the legal system. Like, for example, last year, California passed a law, um, kind of mirroring what Illinois and some other states did, where the police cannot use deceptive or coercive questioning tactics against minors. I had a conversation with the Northern California Innocence Project, and they wanted to have it everybody, and the police and the police unions in California are too strong. The district attorneys are too strong. They got it watered down to 25 and under, and then at the last minute it was under 18, which is better than nothing. But really, you know, you're 18 years in one day, and they can do anything they like.
Mhm.
And then there's a Pennsylvania law that I would love to see them bring over here, which is the same sort of thing, but it it's around people with developmental disabilities. So in Pennsylvania, it is now illegal for the police to use deceptive or coercive questioning against people with developmental disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And which is good, because those people are just not equipped to deal with law enforcement. And
Mm-mm.
I saw this in court with my family member, where the judge would be throwing out legal terms as simple as, do you agree to waive time? And he had no idea what the judge was talking about. So little steps. I understand they've eliminated cash bail in Illinois. That got shot down in flames in California. But little improvements in the system. Plea bargaining is a big problem. I'd like to see some major changes there. So many different things I'd like to tackle, and I'm not really sure where to start, but anyway, this group that I'm involved in has some great ideas, and hopefully we will figure out how to make a difference.
And that's that group that that you were in.
Advocates for the falsely accused.
Yeah.
It was formerly the NCFM women's group. So we're tackling sort of the whole umbrella of false accusations, whereas the NCFM umbrella is sort of more false accusations against men. But we all kind of collaborate together. So
Yeah, so the advocates for falsely accused are they're just under the umbrella of everybody, the disabled, women
right.
and men, children.
Yes, and we also work with the other group, used to be LRIDD, but they've rebranded themselves, decriminalizing developmental disabilities, and they fight for people in the legal system who are up against charges that, in many cases, they don't even understand what they're being accused of or why they're there.
Oh, so
People with, like, the IQ of an 8-year-old and stuff like that, thrown in prison because the system really only cares that you did it. They don't care whether you're capable of understanding what it was that you supposedly did. And of course, in a lot of cases, they didn't even do it. So
right, right. Oh, so very sad that it's just gotten worse. I think it's gotten worse over the years, don't you? These false allegations and accusations.
I think so. And I think it's because, and it probably started before me too, but just the whole idea that you should just automatically believe someone who makes that kind of an accusation makes it difficult for anybody in the legal system to push back on it. There's a political liability, and nobody's going to willingly give up their career in law enforcement or in the district attorney's office, in a judgeship or whatever, to appear soft on crime. And that's kind of what this has done, has made it into, if you don't believe victims, even if they really aren't victims, because false accusers are not victims, they're criminals, but it has made it politically unacceptable to push back.
I just, I don't know. That's just terrible. Just terrible. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If the person's innocent, I just don't know why this isn't being run right. Probably because there's collusion or payoffs, things like that too.
Yeah, and I mean, people who are elected officials, and I'm actually one, so maybe I shouldn't say that, but people who are elected officials often are looking to move into a higher office, and if you're perceived as soft on crime, you're just not going to get there. Especially where I'm at, they think of California as that kind of hippy dippy liberal state. Well, I'm here in El Dorado County, and I'm telling you, it's red. So the prosecutor here is not going to do anything that makes him appear soft on crime because he has aspirations. He's like the head of the entire state's district attorney's organization, and I believe he's looking for something higher. I don't know if it's attorney general or what, but he's not gonna stick his neck out and make it look like he's soft on crime. And unfortunately, that has repercussions for people who really aren't criminals,
Mhm.
but the system thinks they are.
You know, I'm so glad I had you on. I'd like to have you back on again. Do you have any advice for anyone who's listening?
Well,
And
for one thing, as soon as you're accused of something, you need to know, don't talk to the police, they're not your friend. You talk to them, and for example, in this person's case, for example, consensual sex, and you admit to it, you've right away put yourself at the so-called scene of the crime. Don't talk to the police. If somebody falsely accuses you, don't try to get back in touch with them. Don't take their phone calls. It could be a pretext call with the police on the other end. Just, get an attorney, trust your family. Don't talk to police. I can't say that often enough because they are looking for somebody to pin a crime on. I'm not saying they're all dishonest. Many of them are great guys, but they're looking for criminals. Don't give them anything that they could use. You don't know what you say that might be used against you. Don't do it.
wise advice. How can people reach you if they have any questions?
Um, well, for me personally, they can get me on email at DE Wolfson, WOLF as in Frank, S as in Sam, ON at AOL.com. They can also look at our website, which is the AFFA, THEAFFA.org. We are a new organization, but we are building a resource list and hopefully a support group. And we'd love to get more people involved with great ideas about how to reform the system, about how to raise awareness, and so on.
And that organization, can you say that one more time?
THEAFFA, THEAFFA.org.
Okay. Well, don't jump off, okay? Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, and the recently released Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, and feel free to donate to buy me a coffee to keep the podcast going. And I thank you, Dawn Wolfson, for coming on and really opening up our eyes, which this needs to be done, and I totally appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.